Hey guys, it's Sam, and today, in honor of Pride Month, I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite bi-cons. If you are not familiar, bi-con stands for bi icons. Now, I really only started seeing explicitly bi characters in fiction in the last few handful of years, and I decided to talk about characters that truly for me are like bi-cons, because there have been a number of characters that are either side characters or where it's briefly mentioned that they're bi, but it's a passing one-off sentence that I might not even remember. So there are obviously characters that I've left off of this list, but for the most part these are the ones that really stand out to me as bi-cons. So I do want to do a couple of honorable mentions. First is the Wayfarer series by Becky Chambers. This is a slice of life science fiction series, I would say. Each are companion novels, so you don't have to read them in any particular order really, although I would still start with the first one, but you can really kind of read them in whatever order you want. All of these books feature a plethora of LGBTQ+ characters. I'm not even sure which books do feature bi characters, but the entire series just features multiple characters of multiple different gender expressions as well, because there's different aliens, and how the aliens think about gender is very different than how humans think about gender, and there's just a plethora of different identities, different races, everything within these books. So I wanted to recommend those, although there's not a character that I would say stands out to me as a bi-con. My other sort of honorable mention is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. And with this, the love interest of Nathaniel is bi, and again, it's sort of thrown in later on in the book in a one-off couple of sentences where he mentions that he's been with men and women. And the reason I wanted to throw this in is even though it's not a huge part of the book, or he doesn't really stand out to me as this bi character that I think of a lot, this is one of the only books in which there's a male bi character. I don't tend to see in fantasy, because most of these books are sci-fi and fantasy for the most part, I don't tend to see bi characters in general, but if I do see bi characters, they're typically women. So this is one in which we had a love interest and a male character who was bi. Alright, now we get into the actual list. These are in no particular order or anything. I'm not ranking characters by how bi are they? I'm not doing that or saying how much they're my favorite or anything. These all include just really iconic bi characters for me. The first book is Heart and Soul by Erin Kinsella. This is actually an adult contemporary romance. It's the first book that's going to be in a series that's going to follow this larger cast of characters. But basically our main character goes over to South Korea to visit a friend, and she has actually written a historical novel that's going to be adapted over in Korea to a K-drama, and so she's there for that as well. And one of her favorite K-pop stars is actually starring in her miniseries, and they end up interacting and having to fake date at some point. So this was such a cute, fluffy story, but what was great and what made it so iconic is that both of the main characters are bi or pan. I'm forgetting, I think one of the characters identifies more as pan. I think the female character does, the lead, and the male character identifies as bi, I think. Basically, the entire cast of characters is on the LGBTQ+ spectrum. We have ace characters, we have demi characters, we have bi characters, we have lesbian characters, we have gay characters, everything. And they're all going to be explored throughout the series, but this was particularly great because we had two characters who were falling in love, who both loved people of multiple genders, and it was also just a really sweet, fluffy romance as well. I think I have a review, and if I do a standalone one, I will link that on the screen. Next, we have the Nevernight series by Kristoff. In this, our main character of Mia is bisexual, and this more comes into play in the second book, where that becomes a thing that you actually are more aware of. I think you're pretty aware in the first book, but it becomes more of a thing, I would say, in the second book. So she stands out to me as a bi-con for sure. Some people have polarizing opinions about her various relationships in the series. However, I love her, and I'm in complete agreement that everyone that sees her should fall all over themselves in love with her. So next we have King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo, but really the character in here, Nina, who is a bi woman, she pops up and is first introduced in Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. I'm not sure. I think it said that she's bi in those books. I think it might have been brought up in Crooked Kingdom, but it's for sure brought up and talked about in King of Scars, which is why I include this instead of including those, but know that she's in all of them. Nina's a bi-con. She's also a plus-size character, which is really great to see, and she is really confident in herself, which is awesome as well. She is not ashamed of anything about herself, and is just I'm here, I'm queer, I'm fat, love me because I'm gorgeous. And I appreciate that about her. Then we have the Book of the Ancestor series by Mark Lawrence. The first book is Red Sister, and this I've talked about multiple times this series, but it basically takes place in a assassin nunnery with magical assassin nuns, many of them in love with each other. So there's a lot of lesbians in this, but our main character of Nona is bisexual. This series is not like super in your face with any kind of romance, so if you don't like romance in general, like this is kind of an okay series. The most romance that you actually do get is actually in a novella that is not included with the series, which is a huge shame, and that is called Bound, if you have not read that and you have read the series, which it really should have been included in the books, but whatever. I feel like that novella actually is the biased thing about the series, but again, we do have women loving women relationships throughout, and then Nona as a bi woman as well. Or I guess she could be pan. She never actually like identifies, but you see her with somebody that identifies as female and someone that identifies as male. Then possibly the biased series that I have read thus far is the Imperium Trilogy by Claire Legrand. This follows two female characters in different timelines, both with magical abilities, blah blah blah. With the bi-ness, both of them are bicons. Both of the characters are very sexual beings, like they just both love sex and talk about it and have hookups and things like that. They both are very clear throughout both books that they are bi or pan. Again, I'm kind of using bi and pan interchangeably here. With a lot of these books, the characters aren't actually saying, I am this orientation, but I'm using bi to say somebody that is in love with people of multiple genders. But you have these characters hooking up with people of multiple genders, you have them in relations with people of multiple genders. It's beautiful, and it's like throughout the story, and it's woven through the story in a way that I'm like, this is a bi series. This is a series for the bis. Like, it's just, it's wonderful. I love it so much. There's so many things that I do enjoy about this series in general. I've done a review for this book recently and also for Reborn, but I will link one or the other on the screen if you're interested in the series. But the biased thing I've ever read. Then we have a book I'm currently reading, but I'm almost done with, and I can safely say that this character is a bicon. And that is Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is a adult contemporary romance. It's the second technically in a series, but you don't have to have read the first book. With romances in general, you don't have to read them in order, typically speaking. So this is just following a different character. All the characters in the series are the Brown sisters. They're three sisters. There might be more that they're going to follow after the sisters. I don't know. But anyway, Danny is a bisexual witch, and she does identify as bi, so she says bi in the story. That's a little bit more common with contemporary books. And she's also great. She's also a fat woman, and she is like, I'm hot, and she's also very smart, and she's like perfect. So this book has been really fun to read. Also, the love interest is like somebody who's really chill. It's a really chill guy, and he like there's no kind of like question of her sexuality or anything. He's just very like, cool, okay, wonderful. So yeah, I just love them. I'm about like, as of the filming this video, like 82% of the way into it, so I don't foresee me being like, actually the bi rep is awful. Like, it's been great so far, so love it. And lastly, this is probably maybe my favorite. I don't know. I like all of these, but this one is also very iconic, and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book is a historical fiction taking place from like is it the 50s or 60s on, and follows a fictional starlet who is in classic Hollywood, and she's getting interviewed in her old age in her like 70s or 80s, kind of going over her life, but no one has ever learned the story of her. But one of the big things about her that people are always intrigued by is that she's had these 7 husbands. So that's just kind of like her story. But Evelyn does identify as bisexual, does have relationships with women, and identifies clearly on the page as bisexual. She's like, I've been in love with men and women. You get to see her love stories with both men and women, and she plainly says like, do not erase my bisexuality in the text. So she is bi, she's a bicon, she's basically like a Marilyn Monroe type feeling character who also might have been bi. So yeah, just love it. Love that classic Hollywood bisexual. So that is it for my list of bicons. Comment down below and let me know some of your favorite bi characters. Again, I know there's some that I did leave out, but I definitely wanted to focus on the ones where I felt like their bisexuality was like a prominent part of their personality and not something that was like glossed over in a few sentences. But definitely let me know if there's other characters, especially in fantasy stories, that are bi that I need to read. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.